Hi, welcome to Backchat, my series where I get to talk to some of Britain's leading health experts for their top tips and advice. Today we're going to focus on nutrition and how it can affect our overall health and well-being in the workplace. Today I'm delighted to be joined with Angela Steele.
Hi, Nichola.
Hi, CEO and founder of award-winning business SuperWellness.
Thanks very much for inviting me. It's great to be here.
That's my absolute pleasure. Can you tell us a little bit about what your company does?
Yeah, sure. So SuperWellness, we provide corporate nutrition services. So we work with employers to raise awareness around healthy eating and to support employees to improve their health physically and also mentally.
And so, in practical terms, how do you engage with companies?
So we have a team of nutritionists around the UK. A lot of the work we do is on site, so face-to-face with the employees. And we have a range of services. So we provide resources like posters or monthly resources linked to health campaigns. We also run quite a wide range of workshops on different topics, but always with nutrition as the core. And we also run full programs over multiple months that are really aimed at leading to behaviour change and measurable results.
Fantastic. So, of course, there are those expressions, we are what we eat, and an army marches on its stomach.
Yeah,
would you agree?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. You know, I think we've all experienced that kind of post-lunchtime slump where you feel like, you know, just hiding behind your screen. And I think we've all experienced that, you know, what we eat really has an impact on how we feel. Yeah.
So would you say a diet, what the workforce is eating, affects a company's bottom line?
Yes, totally. And I think that's such an important aspect of well-being, that it is about improving employees' mental and physical health, but it should also reflect in the company's bottom line. You know, if it's delivered well, I think it really should have an impact for the business. And there's certainly statistics now that are starting to show that. So relating to nutrition in particular, there was a study by Brigham Young University back in 2012 that showed the impact of a poor diet on productivity could be as high as 66%. So you can well imagine, you know, if a company can make a difference of 10% in their employees' productivity, the impact that has on the bottom line. And then there's some recent figures as well around presenteeism and the impact that has on productivity, which is 12-fold the impact of sickness absence. And a lot of that we know is related to diet and lifestyle. So it's starting to become more and more evident that really things like nutrition and well-being can have an impact on the bottom line.
So how would you say diet particularly affects bone and back health, being particularly interested in back health, my clients?
Yeah, so back health, of course, is at the top of the list when it comes to corporate well-being having an impact on the bottom line. We know that it's really a leading cause of long-term sickness absence, for example. I think what is less known is the impact that nutrition can have on back health. And really, you know, it's different. There are different ways in which nutrition will affect back health. So the first is in terms of nutrients that are needed to keep our bones healthy. So bones are a living tissue. They're constantly renewing their cells. And so they require a constant source of, you know, constant supply of nutrients, things like calcium, things like protein, magnesium, vitamin D, those sorts of things. So obviously those things need to come from the diet or from sunshine, you know, being exposed to sunlight. Then there's other areas that might be less obvious as well. So inflammation. Inflammation is a massive source of back pain and musculoskeletal pain. We know that diet has a big influence where inflammation comes in. If we're on a diet of junk food, processed food, fizzy drinks, high sugar, that creates systemic inflammation in the body. So it creates pain, which might translate as joint pain. So it's really important to have a diet that will be anti-inflammatory. So effectively, that's your Mediterranean diet, you know, high in colourful vegetables and fruit, omega-3 type fats, good supply of protein, those sorts of things. Then the digestion plays a big part as well. So where back health is concerned, that's going to play a part in how well we absorb our nutrients. So you might be having a great diet, high in calcium and all of those nutrients, but if you have digestive issues, then you won't be absorbing those nutrients quite so well. So that's something that we can address as well through nutrition. And then, of course, the fourth element and a big risk factor for back health is overweight. So being overweight, which can put pressure on our skeletal system. And that's obviously something that we can address, in a kind of lasting, sustainable way through nutrition.
Fantastic. So with bone health particularly, is there particular nutrition that you should be looking at for bone health?
Yes, totally. So in terms of these nutrients that I mentioned, calcium is obviously the first thing that comes to mind, and so we really need a diet that has good sources of calcium. So that could be obviously, we'll come back to dairy, but that's one source. But then you also have other foods like salmon or leafy greens, which are also high in calcium. Things like tahini, which is sesame seed paste, which is, really good source of calcium. So you want to be having those foods really on a daily basis. In practical terms, I think some ingredients to remember on a regular basis would be to have protein with every meal. So that doesn't necessarily mean animal sources. It doesn't necessarily mean fish or meat. It could be eggs, it could be vegetarian plant sources like legumes, nuts and seeds, those sorts of things. Something to have on a regular basis would be dark leafy green vegetables, things like broccoli, kale. So I'd look to have those on a daily basis, at least one of your meals high in dark leafy greens. And they're a good source of calcium, but also magnesium, which really helps to relax all the muscles and, prevent that kind of tense feeling.
Yeah.
And then you want to be looking at omega-3s, so having really healthy fats and oily fish, for instance, 3 times a week, ideally, as a minimum. So you can really, you have to be practical about these things, because when you're in a work environment, time is short, it has to be convenient. So things like tins of sardines, great.
Yeah.
And, they would be foods that I'd look to integrate on a regular basis.
So yes, talking about the workplace, actually, what are the sort of pressures you find people go under to try and maintain a good diet? It's quite difficult sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd say the workplace in itself kind of raises a whole range of health risks, in a way, because you're in an environment where you're short of time. You might be traveling for work, so you might not easily have access to all the healthy ingredients.
Yeah.
People who are in their car a lot, what options are there sometimes if you're just kind of stopping at the garage, and with the best intentions in the world, there's not much you can do. Then there's things like obviously peer pressure, we find is a massive, massive challenge for people in the workplace. So we talk about cake culture, the sort of custom of having birthday cake, every week or so. There's always an opportunity to have something sweet and,
not always doing them a favour.
Exactly. So there's definitely peer influence is a big one. And then there's aspects of certain professions like shift work, where that's really working against the body's natural rhythm, and that really puts a lot of pressure on our health. Also business lunches, entertaining clients. The list is endless, really.
Yes. So what are the tips that you would say can help overcome those types of difficulties?
Yeah, so I think there's as always with workplace nutrition, we've got to keep things really simple and doable and not too overwhelming. So I'd say my top tips of things to do on a regular basis, one would absolutely be to try and move away from the desk at lunchtime. So just to take a break and eat away from a screen, for the simple reason that when you're sat in front of a screen, reading something, doesn't even have to be work related, your body goes into, it moves out of a rest and digest mode of your nervous system. So you're actually switching off all the function that makes it possible to digest effectively. So that can cause digestive issues, but it also means that you're not really giving your body an opportunity to relax, and your muscles, your shoulders are going to remain tense. So definitely move away from the desk and just take some time to chew and digest properly. So that would be the first thing. Secondly, I'd say to plan. So meal planning, being organised. I'd say that is really the foundation of having a healthy diet. Having healthy foods in your cupboard that are easy to access. So that would be your tins of sardines or salmon or tuna, things like cans of legumes, oat cakes, nut butters, all these foods that you can easily grab, and have a healthy snack. So you don't succumb to the snack machine.
It's all about sort of building yourself up to get into healthy habits, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. There is a lot involved. So it's not something that happens all at once. It's definitely about taking small steps and practicing, picking 3 things that you decide to practice, like moving away from your desk, going for a walk, planning once a week, those sorts of things, and then building it up slowly.
So it's when it all comes together, the ergonomics, getting away from your desk, taking standing breaks, getting outside for some fresh air, builds into that whole nutrition as well. There's a reason why we're trying to move.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and actually I'm sure you give that advice to people as well, to get up from their desk and have a stretch and have a walk and, and move around, because we know that it's good for blood flow, it's good for health, but yeah, from a nutrition perspective, it also has benefits. Fantastic. So it's massively interlinked.
So in relation to back health, actually, I recently became aware that maybe we shouldn't be having too much dairy in our diet.
Well, that's a really interesting question, and it's not really clear-cut. There's a lot of scientific debate around that subject. So obviously, traditionally, milk was always recommended. It's a ready source of calcium, and the recommendation, I think, was 3 glasses a day. But recently, there's been some research that has perhaps, shown some downsides to that. So one is lactose intolerance. So we know that some people are not very good at digesting milk. And it's actually 20% of the Northern European and American populations.
Actually, my daughter was found to be dairy intolerant. I think that was causing a lot of gut inflammation for her.
Yeah, and did it take a long time
It did take a long time to actually find that.
Yeah. So it can cause these underlying issues, and inflammation, trouble digesting foods properly. So obviously that's an issue. Actually, outside of Northern Europe and America, most of the world's population is intolerant to lactose.
Gosh.
So that's something to bear in mind. It's easier to digest fermented sources of dairy like yogurt and cheese, and even better, sheep's and goats are slightly more digestible. So that's sort of, good to know. But I think, as anything with nutrition, it's always a good rule to never sort of be too extreme with one ingredient, and to try and have a diversity of sources. So calcium, we have really good sources from things like, we were talking about the dark leafy green vegetables like broccoli and kale. They are great. Things like your sesame seeds and tahini paste is also a great source. Legumes, and other sources it's really important to just have that variety, I think.
Thank you so much, Angela. That's been fascinating.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Nichola. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's certainly given me plenty of food for thought.
Yeah, literally.
Literally. And I hope it has for you too. And that you'll join us again on another episode of Back Chat. In the meantime, take care.